Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, May 6th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Well, look, it's been a very busy day today, and I did a 2-hour interview with Dr. Daryl Scott, professor of history at Howard University. Some of you all saw the interview that I did with him today. We broadcasted on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. I didn't know it was going to go that long, the interview, but we talked about the myth that the 13th Amendment is related to mass incarceration. The myth that the 13th Amendment, we talked about the 13th Amendment mass incarceration myth. And we also talked about a term that he coined called Thirteentherism. And then a lot of this ties into the documentary by Ava DuVernay called 13th, which pushes this false concept that the mass incarceration is somehow tied to the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So I'm going to share an excerpt of that interview. It was 2 hours. We'll share an excerpt of that interview later on today's show. But first, we're going to continue our discussion dealing with critical race theory. So, on our show Wednesday, we talked some about critical race theory and the attack on the 1619 Project from New York Times. And we talked about the 1619 Project today also with Dr. Daryl Scott, because there's some flaws with the 1619 Project. There's some problems with it, but I'm not bashing it. I'm just telling the truth. There's some problems with it. But there's an attack by Republicans on critical race theory and the 1619 Project. And we see that attack played out with Senator Tim Scott, Wednesday, April 29th, 2021, Wednesday, April 28th, 2021, when he delivered his rebuttal to Joe Biden's speech to a joint session of Congress. And one of the things that Senator Tim Scott said that people are not picking up on is he talked about what is being taught in school to children. Okay. Once again, Senator Tim Scott was delivering the rebuttal on behalf of the GOP. Okay. He was delivering the rebuttal on behalf of the GOP. But one of the things that he said was that, quote, 100 years ago, kids in classrooms were taught the color of their skin was their most important characteristic. And if they looked a certain way, they were inferior. Today, kids again are being taught that the color of their skin defines them. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. Okay. I hear a lot of people commenting on his speech, and they're commenting on him saying America's not a racist country. They haven't analyzed the speech. It's a very loaded speech, and it is how the GOP, how Republicans largely think. The line right after, and we've talked about this a number of times here on the show, the line right after America's not a racist country is the most important part of the speech. He said it's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination, and it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the present. So that deals with policies like the $5 billion going to African-American farmers and farmers of color, things like this, in the $1.9 trillion rescue plan. Because on Face the Nation on Sunday, May 2nd, Tim Scott attacked that policy that's in the American Rescue Plan, and he said, you're taking away from one group to give to another group. No, you're not. You're not taking anything away from white farmers, especially after white farmers got almost $26 billion in 2020 from the Trump administration. African-American farmers got 1/10 of 1%, 20.8 million out of 26 billion. You're not taking away from white farmers. So we're going to deal with why, the real reason why Republicans don't want critical race theory taught in schools. Now, on yesterday's show, I shared with you the interview that Dr. Mark Lamont Hill did with Vernon Jones. Okay. And Vernon Jones is a former state representative out of Georgia. And he was a Democrat. He switched to the Republican Party. He's a big Trump supporter. He's running for governor. And Vernon Jones got into trouble with Dr. Mark Lamont Hill because Vernon Jones said if he becomes governor of Georgia, then he's going to ban critical race theory. But when pressed to explain what critical race theory is, Vernon Jones had no clue what critical race theory is. He's just pandering to white conservatives. Now, critical race theory is a legal analysis on the premise that race is a social construct that is used to oppress people of color rather than a natural biological feature. So that was on the May 4th, 2021 edition of Dr. Mark Lamont Hill on the Black News Channel. So May 5th, he had Dr. Imani Perry on from Princeton University, professor of African American Studies, who's an expert on critical race theory, to dig deeper into what is critical race theory and why is there such a backlash against it. Now, there's no push to teach critical race theory in schools and middle schools, high schools. It's basically taught at the college graduate level and in law schools. So when you have people like Governor Brad Little of Idaho signing into law, he just signed a bill that bans teaching critical race theory in schools. Well, this is a solution searching for a problem. This is a solution searching for a problem. There's no big effort to teach critical race theory in school. So you have to ask the question. So why are Republicans so afraid of critical race theory, and why is there this effort to attack this? Okay, so we're going to talk about this. There's an article from theguardian.com from May 6, 2021, Thursday, May 6, 2021. Idaho governor signs bill to ban critical race theory from being taught in schools. Theory states that racism is embedded in U.S. history and modern American law, and that legal institutions are inherently racist. See, I keep explaining to people, you do not understand what Senator Tim Scott was saying. You have to understand politics and understand this whole context and this whole climate that we're in to understand the message he was delivering on behalf of the GOP. When he said America is not a racist country, what the GOP is doing, what Republicans are doing, is directly attacking critical race theory, saying that America is not inherently racist, and they're directly attacking the 1619 Project. Because the 1619 Project centers the beginning of this country in 1619 in Virginia, okay, and it deals with changing the way that we look at the history of this country, but it also roots the history of the country in racism, okay, in 1619. And there was an article from which one was that? There was one from, I was looking at it. We talked about it on the interview with Dr. Daryl Scott today. There was an article from the New York Times that dealt with an update to the 1619 Project. And it gave a brief breakdown of the 1619 Project. And let me see if I can pull this up here. But it says the 1619 Project is an ongoing initiative from the New York Times Magazine that began in August 2019, the 400th anniversary of the beginning of American slavery. We'll pull this up here just a second. It aims to reframe the country's history. And I'm going to show this to you. Okay. We'll bring this up on the screen share. All right, so this is from March 11th, 2020. This was uh, co- um, a a slight correction that they had to make to the 1619 project. It aims to reframe the country's history by placing the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of our national narrative. Okay, but what it does is what the 1619 project does is centers the origins of this country and racism. When they say America's not a racist country, they're attacking these efforts to teach about systemic racism, to teach about the history of this country, to teach about the history of slavery. Okay, and this is a revolt against all of those initiatives. That's what this is about. Okay, and then all you have to do is look at the laws, look at the initiatives that are coming from these different Republican states. Now, we'll deal with all this on the other side of the break. Let's to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. We're on commercial break. Stand by. All right, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. We'll be back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by. All right, how's everybody doing? Now, you can still register. Also, be sure to register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. It meets Saturdays, 9 p.m., Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's an online course, and we deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. All right, stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes. And then how many of you all saw the day that Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida signed into law a voter restriction bill? Signed that into law today. Okay, here's information about the online course. So we meet again Saturday, May 8th, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. And I do the class live, but all the sessions are recorded. So you can, they're archived. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, May 6, 2021. And we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 if you have a brief question or comment. Right before the break, we were talking about critical race theory, a continuation from yesterday's show. And then I shared the interview that Dr. Mark Lamont Hill did with former Georgia State Representative Vernon Jones. And Vernon Jones is running for governor of Georgia. He's African American. He's a Trump lover, Trump supporter. He was a Democrat, switched to the Republican Party. He said that if he becomes governor, he's going to ban critical race theory. But when questioned a number of times about what critical race theory is, he didn't know. He could not tell. So Dr. Mark Lamont Hill on his Wednesday, May 5th show spoke with Dr. Imani Perry, professor of African American Studies at Princeton University, and she's an expert on critical race theory. So they go through and break it down and explain the real reason why Republicans don't want critical race theory taught and don't want the history of slavery taught in schools. We're going to deal with that in just a minute. Also, we'll talk about in Idaho, Governor Brad Little signs a bill to ban critical race theory from being taught in schools. And then today, um, Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida signed a voter restriction bill into law while shutting out all media except for Fox News. So there's an attack on multiple fronts. There's an attack dealing with what's being taught in schools, and an attempt by Republicans to keep the history of slavery, to keep the real history of this country from being taught in schools. Then you have an attack in state legislatures with voter restriction bills. And as of March 24th, 2021, from the tracking from the Brennan Center for Justice, 361 voter restriction bills that Republicans are pushing in 47 state legislatures. Okay. All right. So I want to remind you, you can still register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 9-week, 18-hour online course. We deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We start in ancient Africa, Nile Valley region of Africa. We deal with ancient Kemet and Nubia and Ta-Nehisi, Ethiopia. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who take the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt into Europe. And it's going to be these teachings that bring Europe out of the dark ages to our detriment. Everything we taught them came back to kick us in the behind. So if you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, we have the information right on the home page. And when you scroll down, you'll see the information for our radio show. You can listen to podcasts, hear the show, audio podcasts. Click here to read articles I've written. We have the information for the online course here. It meets Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, all the sessions are recorded. We do the class live. You can join us online live. All the sessions are recorded and archived. You can watch them over and over again. Okay, so click here to enroll. As soon as you enroll, you can start watching the content. You can watch the class from May 1st. All right, and also I taught the class in what was that, February and March 2021, and all that is archived as well. Okay, so you can check that out. So the class is regularly $130, on sale $80. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All right, we're gonna go to clip one, Shakita. I want to go to this clip here. So this is a continuation of the discussion with former state representative Vernon Jones. Dr. Mark Lamont Hill on May 5th spoke with Princeton professor of African American Studies, Dr. Imani Perry, to further explain critical race theory and why Republicans are so against the real history of this country being taught in schools. Let's go. Okay, I'm getting. Hey, Shakita, so stop the clip. Stop the clip. I'm getting a bunch of feedback. Okay, for some reason, Shakita, I'm getting a bunch of feedback. I don't know what this is. You shouldn't do that. This is the first time I've heard that. Hold on. Hold on just a second. All right, stand by. What the heck? Okay, check. I'm getting. Okay, that's better. Okay, I think it's when I have it up to the volume up too high, it's giving feedback. That should be good. Okay, those watching on Facebook and YouTube, is the audio okay? Okay, go ahead and play the clip, Shakita. Stand by. Stand by. Hey, Shakita. There's something wrong with the audio. They can't hear on Facebook and YouTube. I have everything set up the way it normally is. Let me do this. Let me do this. Let me call back in. It may be, I'm not sure if there's something wrong with the Skype connection. So just a second here. Where is the Skype connection? Can you hear me, Shakita? Okay, let's do this here. All right, let me call back into the station. Stand by, everybody, stand by. Stand by. All right, I'm calling back in. There's something wrong with the audio. For some reason, they couldn't hear on Facebook and YouTube. They can't. Okay, go ahead and play the clip. Start the clip from the beginning. Go ahead and play the clip again. And I don't know what's wrong. Let's see here. Okay, go ahead. Start the clip from the beginning.
All right, so play the same clip? Okay. All right.
Quality, I possess some stay on fresh with my voice on through the rest of the mic. Perform, good eye, hold it.
Stand by, everybody, stand by. All right. Pause it there, Shakita. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on with the audio coming through the system and coming through the laptop for Facebook and YouTube. But so basically, critical race theory is dealing with understanding racism as a race and racism as a social construct. And there's an attempt by some people to really teach the real history of this country, teach the real history of slavery in schools, not teach critical race theory, but teach the real history of slavery and systemic racism, things like this in schools. And many Republicans are against this. All right. If we look at this story here coming out of Idaho, and we see what the bill that the governor of Idaho, Brad Little, just signed into law. TheGuardian.com has an article about this, and so does the Grio. Idaho governor signs bill to ban critical race theory from being taught in schools. Theory states that racism is embedded in U.S. history and modern American law, and that legal institutions are inherently racist. Legal institutions are inherently racist. So see, when Senator Tim Scott delivered the message on behalf of the GOP and said America is not a racist country, this is what they're talking about. They're saying America is not inherently racist. America is not racist from its origin. Okay. This is what they're saying. They're trying to say that it's not embedded into all the institutions and things like this. Okay, many Republicans are saying systemic racism does not exist. Governor Ron DeSantis just last week Thursday, at a town hall meeting for Fox News, reacting to and they were asking the question, is America racist? Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida said systemic racism does not exist. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has said a number of times systemic racism does not exist. He said that recently before Wednesday, April 28th, when Senator Tim Scott delivered the speech. Now, if we look at this article here from TheGuardian.com, Idaho's Governor Brad Little signed into law. Idaho's Governor Brad Little has a bill signed into law that aims to restrict critical race theory from being taught as a subject in schools and universities. The bill, H377, prevents teachers from indoctrinating students. Prevents teachers from indoctrinating students into belief systems that claim that members of any race, sex, religion, ethnicity, or national origin are inferior or superior to other groups. Now, see, this is another buzzword, indoctrination. Now, that's what the European American controlled, the white controlled school system has been doing to African American students for decades, indoctrination. But when you attempt to teach the real history of this country, then Republicans call that indoctrination. The bill H377 prevents teachers from, quote unquote, indoctrinating students into belief systems that claim that members of any race, sex, religion, ethnicity, or national origin are inferior or superior to other groups. So they don't want you teaching about the history of white supremacy, the history of racism in this country, systemic racism. Signed into law last week, H377 also makes it illegal to make students, quote, affirm, adopt, or adhere to beliefs that members of these groups are today responsible for past actions of the groups to which they claim to belong. So it makes it
The bill makes it illegal to make students affirm, adopt, or adhere to beliefs that members of these groups are today responsible for past actions of the groups to which they belong. Well, we're not saying that white people today are responsible for what their ancestors did hundreds of years ago or decades ago. White people today benefit from what their ancestors did hundreds of years ago, decades ago. You don't want to be honest. They benefit from it. They benefit from the land theft. They benefit from 246 years of slavery and largely free labor. They benefited from the labor unions being created, going back to right after the slavery ended, and labor unions like the National Labor Union, okay, in 1866. And the labor unions, a lot of these labor unions are being created right after slavery ends to lock African Americans out of the 262 skilled trades and crafts that we have been doing largely for free. Okay, a lot of the skilled trades. There were at least 262 skilled trades and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. Well, you're going to have a lot of these labor unions created to protect jobs for white men after slavery ends, because now we can compete for wages. We can compete for these jobs, and our skill set was as good as white people, if not better. In many cases, it was better. Okay, so they benefit from all of this. Okay, now that's not attacking white people today. That's understanding the history. And racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Okay, they benefited from massive land giveaways like the Homestead Act of 1862 and the Southern Homestead Act of 1866 and the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887. The Homestead Act of 1862, they gave away about 245 million acres of land up until 1988. Up until 1988. The last allotment was given is about 80 acres in Alaska. That was in 1988. It started in 1862. When you have the GI Bill and $67 billion of federal dollars, taxpayer dollars invested in the GI Bill from about 1945 to 1970. In African American GIs are largely being discriminated against. Yes, some of them can take advantage of them, but we're largely being discriminated against. And because of redlining, locked out of being able to get low interest loans to buy homes in various neighborhoods, so our homes can accumulate wealth. Okay, being largely locked out of getting the low interest loans to start businesses. Okay, being able to take advantage of the education opportunities and the money to go to college to a certain extent, but even being discriminated there. And that's taxpayer dollars. Not only did African American GIs earn those benefits, but our taxpayer dollars pay for those benefits. Well, they pay for white people to go to school. They pay for low interest loans that white people got. When you have the Federal Housing Administration and the Federal Housing Act of about 1947, 1949, that allowed white people to get low interest, 3%, put 3% down on low interest loans and get buy houses out in the newly formed suburbs. And because of redlining and segregation, we're discriminated against from being able to take advantage of those same programs. White people benefited from that. So that's not attacking white people who are alive today for what their ancestors did, but we're talking about how you benefit from what your ancestors did. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, media, healthcare, jobs, etc., and they use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. This is what racism is. So what happens is, once again, this is an example of how elections have consequences. This is an example of how elections have consequences. Okay, when you talk about the segregation tax when it comes to home ownership and how African American households are valued at $156 billion less than comparable white homes. Okay, and this gives white people an advantage when it comes to the racial wealth gap. This gives them an advantage. Well, we're not blaming you for what your ancestors did, but we're talking about how you benefit from what your ancestors did. You read this article here from curbed.com. It deals with the study from the Brookings Institute, how a segregation tax is costing Black American homeowners $156 billion. Okay, African American homes are valued on average $48,000 less than homes owned by white people. According to the devaluation of assets in Black neighborhoods, the case of residential property, owner-occupied homes are undervalued by the real estate market across all majority Black neighborhoods and consistently sell or are appraised for lower prices at an average of $48,000 per home. Nationwide, this amounts to $156 billion in cumulative losses, what the report dubs a segregation tax. Well, there's a deep history of this. So we're not blaming you for what your ancestors did. We're talking about how you benefit from what they did. But so what happens is you have a lot of people who can't handle the truth. Okay. You look at we talked about the article from National Public Radio, NPR.org, and it ties into a brief history of how racism shaped interstate highways. And the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts in 1952 and 1956 drove approximately 41,000 miles of U.S. interstate highways all across the country. They read through African-American communities. They employed many white men, thousands of white men, to run these highways. They're creating the suburbs that we're being discriminated against because of redlining. Redlining it comes from the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which is a federal government entity created in 1933, the Homeowners Loan Corporation. Okay. And if you look at this briefly, and we'll get back to the other article, a brief history of how racism shaped interstate highways. Well, this benefited white people creating suburbs that were exclusively white, allowing them to buy homes there, and the homes appreciated in value, creating generational wealth. We're not blaming you for what your ancestors did. We're talking about how you benefit from what they did. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. And now see, this ties into the American infrastructure bill from Joe Biden that a lot of people haven't studied and don't understand the history behind this. We talked about all this on this show. Okay. In his $2 trillion, I want everybody to read this. There's a whole bunch of people talking about what Biden didn't do, all this stuff. You haven't gone and analyzed these policies. In his $2 trillion plan to improve America's infrastructure, President Joe Biden is promising to address the racism ingrained in historical transportation and urban planning. How many people heard about this? How many people heard about this? This is why you have to watch this show. This is why it's so important to support what we do. Biden's plan includes $20 billion for a program that would reconnect neighborhoods cut off by historic investments, according to the White House. It also looks to target 40% of the benefits of climate and clean infrastructure investments to disadvantaged communities. Planners of the interstate highway system, which began to take shape after the Federal Aid Highway Act, of 1956, routed some highways directly and sometimes purposefully through African-American and Hispanic Latino communities. In some instances, the government took homes by eminent domain. In some instances, the government took homes by eminent domain. We saw I-375 run right through Black Bottom and Paradise Valley here in Detroit. And Black Bottom was a residential area where African Americans owned homes, and Paradise Valley was an entertainment and business district. And they run through and they wipe out about 300 businesses. Okay. And many of those African Americans get displaced over to the 12th and Claremont area. Okay. And so then when in 1967, when the Detroit Rebellion breaks out at 12th and Claremont, well, hell, a lot of those African Americans are already peed off. A lot of them are already upset because they got displaced from their homes because of the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts. Now, it left a deep psychological scar on neighborhoods that lost homes, churches, and schools, says Deborah Archer, a professor at the New York University School of Law and national board president of the American Civil Liberties Union. Deborah Archer recently wrote for the Iowa Law Review about how transportation policy affected the development of Black communities. We're not blaming you for what your ancestors did. We're talking about how you benefit from what your ancestors did. This is why you have to deal with the real history of this country. This is not trying to make white people feel guilty, dealing with how all this came into existence and how to change the trajectory of history and understanding how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement, and how you have to have policies put in place that correct the policies that did harm to African Americans and other people. That's what this is about. This is not trying to make white people feel guilty and things like this and say, oh, your ancestors were the oppressors and all this. No. But what happens is you have a lot of people who can't handle the truth. Okay, now, so read this article here from NPR.org, A Brief History of How Racism Shaped Interstate Highways. Okay, so you have that. Then let's see here. Okay. So read that article. I want to go back to The Guardian. And this is dealing with Idaho. See, this is an example of the importance of the powers of a governor, okay? And being able to veto stupid bills that come from the state legislature. Signed into law last week, H377 also makes it illegal, and we'll pull this back up here on the screen share, also makes it illegal to make students, quote, affirm, adopt, or adhere to, end quote, beliefs that members of these groups are today responsible for past actions of the groups to which they claim to belong. Critical race theory is a concept developed by academics and lead scholars of jurisprudence of law with intellectual origins in the 1960s, which were organized officially in the late 1980s. The theory states that racism is embedded both in U.S. history and modern American law. It holds that legal institutions in the U.S. are inherently racist. See, when the GOP, when Republicans are saying America is not a racist country, they are rejecting this idea and saying America is not inherently racist. They're attacking critical race theory. They are attacking the 1619 Project. Often abbreviated as CRT, it seeks to challenge racism and improve equitable racial power through legal reform. Equitable treatment under the law for all races, according to the theory, renders the law incapable of recognizing systemic and indirect racist practices. Okay, so then they talk about the 1619 Project. Since in the bill's transmittal letter to Idaho's Republican House Speaker Scott Betke, Governor Little, who is also Republican, cited the undermining of, quote, trust and local governance of our public schools, end quote, and popular support for public education in Idaho as concerns. He said we must be focused on facts and data, not anecdotes and innuendo. Since the publication of the 1619 Project in the New York Times, a number of school districts and school boards across the U.S. have begun to adopt elements of critical race theory in their curriculum. As a result, Republican state legislatures have begun to push back, sending bills through state houses that attempt to quell the momentum of teaching slavery and other such moments of American history as dark periods of the country's past that continue to affect American life today. Okay, read the rest of this. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. We're going to keep going for a few more minutes. Be sure to register for the online course that I teach. It meets again Saturday, May 8th, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We're out of time here. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. All right, stand by. Stand by. Hold on just a second here. All right, we'll post a link. Who still needs to register for the online course that I teach? Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We'll post a link here again. It's a 9-week, 18-hour online course. All this you can watch live, but all the sessions are recorded, so you can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay. All right. Okay, let's continue here. We'll be here for a few more minutes, and I have to run. I did a 2-hour interview with Dr. Daryl Scott today, and then have to do the show today. I should be on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday. So check that out, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Roland's Facebook and YouTube channel. I'm a panelist each Friday on Roland Martin Unfiltered. All right. So if we go back to this article here from The Guardian dealing with in the state of Idaho, okay, Idaho governor signs bill to ban critical race theory from being taught in schools. Now, critical race theory states that racism is embedded in U.S. history and modern American law, and that legal institutions are inherently racist. So the article goes on to say, bills to ban or restrict the teaching of critical race theory and other subjects deemed divisive or divisive have been drafted in Iowa, Louisiana, Missouri, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, West Virginia, and other states. Bills have already passed in Utah, Arkansas, and Tennessee. Bills have already passed in Utah, Arkansas, and Tennessee. Senate Minority Leader Moscow Mitch McConnell of Kentucky has recently spoken out against the 1619 Project specifically, as the Biden administration is considering $5.3 million in American history and civics education grants for anti-racist scholarships. $5.3 million. They're considering, the Biden administration is considering $5.3 million in American history and civics education grants for anti-racist scholarships. Anti-racist scholarship. In a letter to the U.S. Secretary of Education, we talked about this on yesterday's show, Miguel Cardona, Senator Mitch McConnell wrote that families in the U.S., quote, did not ask for this divisive nonsense, end quote, and that a decision to move forward was not made by voters. Okay, so read the rest of this article. We also know that Mitch McConnell said today that he's 100% focused on stopping Joe Biden's agenda. The Republicans don't want to pass any bills that come from the Biden administration. You saw that the American Rescue Plan, which has jump-started the economy, okay, largely beneficial for a majority of Americans. You see it one way or another. You see the American Rescue Plan, not a single Republican in the House or the Senate voted for the American Rescue Plan. It's not expected that any Republicans, especially in the Senate, it's not expected that any of them will vote for the American Families Plan, $1.8 trillion American Families Plan, or the $2 trillion plus infrastructure bill. It's not expected that any Republicans, especially in the Senate. You may get one or two in the House of Representatives. Okay, it's not expected that any of them in the Senate will vote for it. You possibly may get one for the American Families Plan. Okay, possibly one. Let me see here. There was, this article right here. This is from May 5th, 2021. McConnell says he's 100% focused on stopping Biden's administration. McConnell says he's 100% focused on stopping Biden's administration. McConnell said that about the last administration, about Barack, that he was going to stop everything. President Joe Biden said. Remember when McConnell, right before the 2010 midterm election, said that their number one focus was to make President Obama a one-term president, and they blocked all the bills they could. This is what McConnell's saying now. Now they don't. All the craziness that Republicans are doing, attacking critical race theory, attacking the 1619 Project. Okay, this is their number one focus, to stop policies coming from the Biden administration that are largely beneficial to even Republicans. They're largely beneficial to even Republicans across the country. At the same time, you have Trump loyalists in the Republican Party trying to push out Representative Liz Cheney, okay, as the chair, the Republican chair, okay. All this is taking place at the same time. Liz Cheney of Wyoming, the third-ranking Republican. Okay, so check out this article here also. McConnell says he's 100% focused on stopping Biden's administration. Now, there was, which one did I want to go to next? What I'll do is, being that we're off 9:10 right now, I can play the clip directly from our end. We should be able to play it. The rest of the stuff we'll get to probably Sunday. But I want to go to the clip from Dr. Mark Lamont Hill dealing with critical race theory. We should be able to play that all right here on this side. So let me know if y'all can hear this. Okay, now, so just keep in mind, this is the continuation. This is from his show May 5th, 2021. On his show May 4th, 2021, you remember he had former Georgia State Representative Vernon Jones, who is running for governor of Georgia. Part of his platform is he will sign an executive order to ban critical race theory if he becomes governor. Vernon Jones is African American. He's a Trump supporter. But when pressed by Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, Vernon Jones could not explain what critical race theory is. So I'm sorry, Dr. Mark Lamont Hill Vernon Jones cannot explain what critical race theory is. So Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, the next day on his May 5th edition of his show, brought on Dr. Imani Perry from Princeton University, who's a professor in African American studies and an expert on critical race theory, to further explain what it is. Okay, let's go back to this clip. All right, just a second here. I need to just a minute here. For some reason, the audio is not coming through. All right, hold on. Just, I don't know why it, let me see something. Everything is set up here. Everything is set up. Let me hold on. Let me try to reconnect this. Let me try to refresh the browser. Stand by. Let me try to refresh the browser.
Okay. All right, stand by. So you all should be able to hear me. Testing 1, 2, 3. You all should be able to hear me. All right. So now let's try this again here.
And had many systems of thank you for having me. So the most straightforward way to explain critical race theory is to begin with the civil rights movement, right? So the victories of the movement, which we all know, are found in federal legislation, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, but also in anti-discrimination law, essentially laws that declared Jim Crow policies unconstitutional. So after that moment, we begin to understand, of course, that Black people suffered many other forms of injury and had many systems of.
Okay, so what happened was I had to refresh the broadcast through Restream. For some reason, it wasn't connecting properly. Okay, so we're gonna start the clip from the beginning here, so you all can hear now.
To get someone on the show tonight who is an actual expert on critical race theory and much more. This way, we can all understand what critical race theory is about and how we can develop a better judgment about the current push to ban it from schools in the red states. So joining me now is Dr. Imani Perry, professor of African American Studies at Princeton University. Professor Perry, I'll say Dr. Perry. I know they say PhDs come a dime a dozen. I don't buy that. So I'm going to say your expertise matters. And I'm going to ask you very clearly, what is critical race theory?
Okay.
What is critical race theory, Doc?
Thank you for having me. So the most straightforward way to explain critical race theory is to begin with the civil rights movement, right? So the victories of the movement, which we all know, are found in federal legislation, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, but also in anti-discrimination law, essentially laws that declared Jim Crow policies unconstitutional. So after that moment, we begin to understand, of course, that Black people suffered many other forms of injury and had many systems of disadvantagement and inequality in their lives, right? And so legislatures and municipalities and organizations began to make specific efforts to target African Americans with programs to address current and past discrimination. And they faced a major conservative backlash. And the way that backlash was formed was saying, well, if you make programs to target the discrimination experienced by Black Americans and you don't include me, white person, then you are discriminating against me, right? And so they begin to attack programs like affirmative action and upward bound, et cetera. And the Supreme Court of the United States then really fails the civil rights movement by basically treating targeted programs to address racial inequality as the same form of discrimination as Jim Crow laws, right? That they are both are subject to immediate scrutiny, the strictest scrutiny. So, okay, so we get to this point, and then civil rights lawyers and scholars begin to talk about how we have to be able to address subordination injustice, not just color consciousness. It's not enough to be colorblind. We actually have to be able to address injustice and subordination if we're going to have legal racial equality. And that's the heart of critical race theory. How to think about law, legislation, policies that will substantively respond to racial inequality. And they began to bring multiple forms of analysis to the table: history, narrative, gender, class, showing all the insidious ways that discrimination and inequality have been sedimented in American society, right? And then it blooms in multiple directions, but it is literally just a way of understanding the mechanics of racial inequality and how the law might be imagined to address them. Nothing more than that.
It's an important thing that you talked about, and you laid that out brilliantly. It doesn't really need any addendum by me. But you talked about this other issue of color blindness, which is an important thing, right? Because critical race theory has always rejected liberal colorblind theory. Ironically, because it's always accused of being this wild liberal theory, but in many ways, critical race theory said, hey, wait a minute. Colorblindness as the goal, as a social aspiration, is also problematic. We need to actually think about race. Doesn't mean that we obsess about race, doesn't mean that we prioritize one race over the other per se, but we need to think about race as another factor here.
Right. If you want to address inequality, you have to have data. In order to have data, you have to pay attention to where people from different segments of society are situated. You have to be able to look at the relationships between race and health outcomes, race and class, race and educational outcomes, right? And so if you are colorblind, and we have examples in other nations, Germany might be an example, where if you don't actually keep track of race, you have no mechanisms for addressing racial injustice. That is absolutely untenable in this country that has been organized from the outset around racial inequality. So it's a really, it's a problematic form of legal interpretation. But if we go a step further, if we can't even talk about it in schools, right, it actually has the potential to diminish our young people's ability to be sort of active civic participants, to understand the world they occupy and hopefully build a better society.
Speaking of schools, this whole hullabaloo began because Republican legislators said, we will not allow critical race theory to be taught in schools. Now, I used to teach high school. I've studied schools. I know people in school. I want to know where these schools are, where people are teaching all this critical race theory. This feels like a solution in search of a problem.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so this is a kind of conventional right-wing approach where they create a moral panic around an issue that actually doesn't really exist, right? And we can see a comparable move right now in targeting trans teens, right? They sort of make up a problem and then drum up a lot of anxiety and a moral panic around it as a way to detract attention from their own failed policies and agendas. And unfortunately, because we have a society in which it's easy to ignite a variety of bigotries, they get a lot of traction out of it. But yes, I have taught critical race theory when I taught law school. I taught it many times. I am not aware of it being taught in high schools at all, in K-12 education, and only very rarely in college. I mean, it's not a kind of mainstream. It's not like teaching African American studies. It's not teaching the civil rights movement. It's a very kind of niche field that is largely in law schools and in schools of education at this point, graduate schools of education.
So, right. So this is a sort of interesting moment here. Then, so when they attack critical race theory, it seems like a cynical move. Then they don't know what it means clearly, but they also don't need to know what it means because it seems to be a code for something else.
It's a code for something, and they're also banking on the fact that the general public doesn't know what it means, and that's okay because it's not really a mainstream theory, right? And so they're drumming up anxiety. And it becomes very difficult for those who disagree with them to even engage, because who knows what critical race theory means besides, academics, frankly, and some lawyers, right? So I do think it's cynical. But on the other hand, I do think there's one piece that is very important to be mindful of. it is really clear that they are outraged at the idea that we would teach the history of the nation in an authentic way, with all of the details of the injustice, of the violence, of the inequality, of, all of the isms. That is seen as a problem to them. They want to maintain the fiction of this country, the mythology of this country. And that's something that we do have to be very deliberate about responding to, because we want our kids to be raised with deep and meaningful knowledge.
So ultimately, when they say they don't want critical race theory in school, they really don't want race talk in school. They don't want a racial history in school. They don't want any kind of critical analysis of white supremacy in school.
Right. And I say, yes, all of that, but also they don't want a basically honest history of this nation, right? I mean, you don't have to have a critical analysis to know that slavery was wrong or that Jim Crow was unjust, right? That's not a deep analysis. That's a 5-year-old can understand that those things are unjust. So it's very alarming. I think we have to respond to it, but we cannot be held to their terms because their terms are deceptive.
Professor Imani Perry from Princeton University, thank you for giving us an expert analysis of critical race theory and making this plain. Appreciate you. All right, y'all.
All right. So that's from Dr. Mark Lamont Hill's show on the Black News Channel. That's from May 5th, 2021. That's on YouTube. Princeton professor explains critical race theory with Mark Lamont Hill. Okay, we'll post a link here. All right, so how's everybody doing? We have Twala Baloo, Ruby, Kenneth, Sharon, just a few of the people watching on Facebook and YouTube. Let's see. We'll deal with this story very quickly here, dealing with Governor Ron DeSantis out of Florida. Then I have to get out of here. On our Sunday show, we'll share with you some excerpts of the interview I did with Dr. Daryl Scott. Okay, because we just don't have. I don't think we have time here today. We'll try to squeeze that in. Let's see. There's on Joy Reid's show, The Readout today, she talked about Governor Ron DeSantis signing Florida's restrictive voting law while shutting out all media except Fox News. Okay, we're going to go to this clip. We'll probably talk some more about this on Sunday. Also, on my Sunday show, I want to deal with some of the history of Cinco de Mayo. I was going to try to do it today, but I had too much already to talk about for today's show. And I did a 2-hour interview with, it was actually about 2 hours and 12 minutes with Dr. Daryl Scott. So I'm already tired. But on Sunday's show, one of the things we'll talk about, and we're on Sunday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. We're on 2 hours on Sunday. The forgotten anti-slavery history of Cinco de Mayo. The forgotten anti-slavery history of Cinco de Mayo. Okay. We'll talk about that on Sunday's show.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis returned to his primordial state, the #1 supplicant and pretender to the MAGA throne of his state's most orange and most infamous retiree. This morning, he was back in Trump twinsy mode, making voter suppression into a TV show on Fox News to sign Florida's new draconian voting bill into law.
So right now I have what we think is the strongest election integrity measures in the country. I'm actually going to sign it right here. It's going to take effect. So there you go. Bill is signed.
Well, apparently that was the pilot for his spinoff of The Apprentice, which no one would watch. But anyway, the new law in Florida does all sorts of things to curtail voting rights. It imposes new ID requirements to vote absentee and requires voters to request mail-in ballots every election. It expands powers for partisan poll watchers and adds new limits on ballot drop box locations and who can collect and drop off a voter's ballot. It requires that drop boxes must be physically manned when open. They can't rely on video surveillance. Signing this law alone is, of course, egregious, but that wasn't all that Ron DeSantis did with his low-rent Trump show today. is not just that he went on Fox to do it or that he was essentially holding a campaign rally to promote the orange man's big lie, since that cheering crowd behind him was from an actual Trump fan club. Ron DeSantis also iced out reporters for other outlets, local Florida media. That's right. He signed a law that says someone needs to watch you drop off a ballot, but would only let certain people watch him do it. An Orlando Sun-Sentinel columnist tweeted that media were barred entry, told it was a Fox News exclusive. Of course, Ron DeSantis isn't the first Republican governor to sign away the voting rights of, let's face it, mostly black and brown people in front of his preferred audience or in secret. Who could forget Georgia's Republican governor, Brian Kemp, putting his state on an express train back to the Jim Crow era by signing that state's voter suppression law, flanked by 6 other white guys behind closed doors and under a painting of a plantation, while a black lawmaker was arrested on the other side of the door. No subtlety there. Now, for their part, Fox News went the Mariah Carey, I don't know her route, saying the comfy couch crowd never requested or mandated that the event be an exclusive. But at another event later, DeSantis was asked why his favorite network was the only one allowed in.
Why did you only allow Fox News to capture the moment you signed the controversial election bill?
So we did a wonderful bill signing for this great elections bill, and it was live on national television on Fox and Friends, and we were happy to give them the exclusive on that. And I think it went really, really well. But I think it was a really positive day. We got a lot of great feedback on it, and we're proud that we were able to do it on national television.
Yeah, except that you did not get great feedback on this law, Ron. Literally minutes after it was signed, the League of Women Voters, Black Voters Matter, and the Florida Alliance for Retired Americans filed a lawsuit challenging it. But Ron DeSantis was proud to codify voter suppression into law on national television, exclusively, he says, to a right-wing echo chamber. And that is why tonight, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has earned the dishonor of being the absolute worst.
He absolutely is. He absolutely is the absolute worst. This is an example of how elections have consequences. And I guarantee you, if Andrew Gillum had become governor of Florida, when this bill came across Governor Andrew Gillum's desk, he would have vetoed the bill. And you had some African Americans in Florida who said they were not voting for Andrew Gillum. They said Andrew Gillum doesn't have a black agenda, what have you. But you let somebody get into office who has an anti-black agenda, Governor Ron DeSantis. You let somebody get into office who has an anti-black agenda, and look at what he's doing. You can check out this article here from the Washington Post. Florida's DeSantis signs new voting restrictions into law as Republicans rush to align with Trump's false claims of fraud. Donald Trump is still pushing the big lie. This is from May 6, 2021. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Thursday enthusiastically embraced former President Traitor-in-Chief Donald Trump's demand for tougher election laws, signing into law a slew of new voting restrictions in a staged live broadcast, despite previously touting how smoothly his state's elections ran last fall. You talked about how smoothly the elections ran last fall, so why do you need these voter restriction bills? Well, why do you need this now? Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican, hailed the measure as necessary to shore up public faith in elections, but critics accuse him of trying to make it harder to vote, particularly for people of color. Well, you had people lying to voters, saying the election was rigged, and they're promoting a big lie that caused them to lose faith in the integrity of the elections. Now you're using the big lie, which is proven to be false. But the elections were certified by all 50 states. The state boards of canvassers, all 50 states certified the elections. Even former Attorney General William Barr, when he was Attorney General, he said there was no widespread voter fraud. You know, they're using the big lie to then push these voter restriction bills So Republicans can win elections and reduce how many people can vote. His signing of the bill, which he delivered live on the Fox News morning program, Fox and Friends, makes Florida the latest GOP-controlled state to impose new voting hurdles following Georgia, Montana, and Iowa. The Texas House of Representatives took up a similar measure later Thursday, May 6th, and other states, including Arizona, Michigan, and Ohio, are considering their own bills. Now, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Democrat here in Michigan, has already said that she's going to veto these bills. There are 39 bills Republicans are pushing in the Michigan state legislature. She's already said she's going to veto those bills. Now, Governor Ron DeSantis offered a string of justifications for the law, claiming it would prevent ballot harvesting and the stuffing of ballots into unmonitored drop boxes, though such practices were already prohibited in the state, and there is no evidence they occurred last year. Such practices are already prohibited in the state of Florida, and there's no evidence that these practices took place last year. So why are you trying to ban it? What are you trying to do? Quote, we're not going to let political operatives go and get satchels of votes and dump them in some drop box. What evidence do you have that people were doing this? What evidence do you have that people were doing this? It's a solution searching for a problem. Now, Governor Ron DeSantis's vigorous support for the new law, which he arranged to showcase exclusively on Fox News's signature morning show, Fox and Friends, is the latest example of the GOP's rush to align with Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was marred by fraud. So let me get this straight. You had 200 plus Republicans in the House of Representatives that won elections in the same election. So your argument is all the fraudulent votes were cast for Democratic candidates. Your argument is no fraudulent votes in the same election using the same ballots. Your argument is no fraudulent votes were cast for the 200 plus Republicans in the House of Representatives that won elections. They're on the same ballot as Donald Trump. They're on the same ballot as Donald Trump. You had 50 Republicans. All 50 Republicans weren't up for re-election in 2020, but you had a number of Republicans in 2020 in the Senate who won re-election or voted in office. So you're saying none of the votes for Republicans were fraudulent? The only fraudulent votes were for Democrats on the same ballot in the same race. So I find that hard to believe, but there's here's something that people like Lil Rudy don't want to talk about. We've dealt with it on the show before. We can look at Bruce Bartman in Pennsylvania. Bruce Bartman in Pennsylvania. Bruce Bartman, Pennsylvania man, admits he voted for Trump with his dead mom's name. I listened to too much propaganda, he said. Why isn't this called out as voter fraud by Rudy Giuliani and Governor Ron DeSantis and Republicans? There was voter fraud committed by people voting for Trump. Why isn't that called out as voter fraud? This is from May 4th, 2021. Weeks before Election Day, Bruce Bartman mailed his mother's absentee ballot with a check mark next to President Donald Trump's name. The problem was his mother had been dead since 2008. Why are Republicans calling out this voter fraud? Because keep in mind, there was only one presidential candidate that told their voters to vote twice. That was Donald Trump. That was in North Carolina, if I remember correctly. That was one state. There's only one presidential candidate. Was only one person run for president who told their people to vote twice. That was Trump. So let me go back to this one here. So Bruce Bartman, 70 years old, pleaded guilty on Friday, April 30th, to a charge of felony perjury and unlawful voting, and blamed his decision to cast a fraudulent ballot on consuming too many false claims about the election. So all the Republicans running around talking about the big lie, why aren't they talking about the people who voted for Trump who voted illegally? Why aren't they talking about the people who voted for Trump who voted illegally? I can't figure that out. I just found that baffling. I don't understand why they don't point that out. Now Bruce Bartman got probation. We know Crystal Mason was sentenced to 5 years in prison in Texas, and her vote didn't even count. It was a provisional ballot. Her vote didn't even count. His vote counted, and he gets probation. There was another article that I talked about before. Let me see if we could pull this up. Trying to see if I can. There was one. There was another one here. There was another one where it was a Trump voter who voted twice. Let's see if I can pull that one up. If we look at this one here, this is from November 12th, 2020. Trump supporter admits voter fraud, says she voted twice for president in viral video. Okay, this is from Newsweek.com, November 12th, 2020. Trump supporter admits voter fraud, says she voted twice for president in viral video. A Donald Trump supporter admitted to voter fraud in a viral video, as she says she tried to vote for Trump twice in the 2016 election. The video was posted by the Good Liars, a comedy duo made up of Jason Selvig and Davram Stifler, who regularly pose as Republicans to prank high-profile figures and Trump supporters. In May 2020, they questioned a Trump supporter about voter fraud, who then admitted to committing it herself in the 2016 election. In a video that has been viewed more than 630,000 times on Twitter, 80,000 times on Instagram, and 190,000 times on TikTok at the time of writing. The Good Liars reshared the video late on Wednesday evening and said, "Hey, real Donald Trump, please retweet. We found voter fraud." Trump has been making unsubstantiated claims about voter fraud in the 2020 election, which he lost to Joe Biden. Okay. So you have that article there from Newsweek. It was another one that I was looking for. Well, we know that Trump encouraged voters in North Carolina to vote twice. This is New York Times. Okay. This is from September 2nd, 2020. Encourages people in North Carolina to vote twice, which is illegal. The president's suggestion, president at the time, Donald Trump, which he framed as a way to test the security of election systems, constituted the kind of voter fraud he has railed against. Now, this was before the January 6th insurrection. This is from the New York Times. Okay, he encouraged his supporters in North Carolina to vote twice. So then you have, there was one other one that I was looking for, Iowa woman. Yeah, this okay, that was 2017. There was another case I was looking at. Let me try to find this here. Because I've seen the article before, but okay, I may have to search for this one. Let me look at one other place here just a second, because it's an article I've talked about before. What was that? It was a, I can't remember whether it's Pennsylvania. Or I know in Pennsylvania they have cases. The lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania has talked about cases where you had Trump supporters vote twice. So if we look at this article here from PennLive.com, Pennsylvania Real Times News, the lieutenant governor in Texas offered $1 million for anybody who could prove anybody could come forward with cases of voter fraud. Well, Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman has been pestering the Lieutenant Governor of Texas because he says we found 3 cases of voter fraud. Where's my $3 million? And Lieutenant Governor of Texas is not paid up yet. This is from December 30th, 2020. Pennsylvania's Lieutenant Governor wants his money. Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman has been taking Twitter over the last few weeks, asking his counterpart in Texas to pay up. It all stems from Lone Star State's Republican Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick offering up $1 million in November 2020 for evidence of fraud in the November 3rd, 2020 election. The Houston Chronicle is reporting. Now, Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, a Democrat, points out there were just 3 instances of voter fraud in Pennsylvania. Quote, "We hit the jackpot with this last one," Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman told the Houston Chronicle. There are 3 documented cases, 3. Lieutenant Governor Fetterman said a total of 3 people who cast votes for President Donald Trump have been charged in separate voter fraud cases in Pennsylvania, which he says should all count toward the money Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick offered. The most recent case involved a Delaware County man accused of casting an illegal ballot in the name of his deceased mother, the Philadelphia Inquirer reported. According to reports, in a case week prior to that, Chester County prosecutors have filed charges against a Malvern man accused of casting votes for himself and his son. And reports indicate a Luzerne County man was arrested in October 2020 after investigators say he fraudulently applied for a ballot for his mother, who died 5 years ago. Citing these three cases, Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor Fetterman repeatedly posted on Twitter asking for the $3 million. All I want for Christmas is my handsome reward from Dan Patrick, one post read. Okay, here's one of the posts here. All I want for Christmas is my handsome reward from Dan Patrick. There was a couple of articles I was reading a couple of days ago dealing with this. One out of Texas, and I think I have the articles here. I think I bookmarked these. Let me see something here. Yeah, okay, so there's one from the Washington Post I was looking at. There was also one from, yeah, it's on the other laptop. I was looking at it. There's one from the Texas Tribune, and there's one from, let's look at this. Let's pull up this one here from the Washington Post. Because, see, in all this talk about voter fraud and stolen election, Republicans don't want to talk about any of this. Despite GOP rhetoric, there have been fewer than 24 charged cases of voter fraud since the 2020 election. This is from the Washington Post. One person has faced charges for every 10 million votes cast. One person has faced charges for every 10 million votes cast. But they want to talk about widespread voting fraud, things like this. Where is it? Show me the cases. How many cases are there? How many cases were prosecuted? This is from May 4th, 2021. By Philip Bump for the Washington Post. And then lastly, this article here from the Texas Tribune I was looking at. There's no evidence of widespread voter fraud. But Dan Patrick is encouraging people to report it with up to a $1 million reward. That's from Texas Tribune. Let me pull this one up also. Okay, so we got that one from Washington Post. Then we look at this one here, lastly, from the Texas Tribune. Let's pull this over. This is from November 10th, 2020. A week after the November 3rd election. There's no evidence of widespread voter fraud, but Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor of Texas, is encouraging people to report it with up to a $1 million reward, The Republican Lieutenant Governor's crusade for proof of election problems in Texas comes as members of his own party dominated up and down the ballot. So Republicans run up and down the ballot in Texas, but you're saying that there's widespread voter fraud. Well, how many people fraudulently voted for Republicans? So read this one here also, okay? All right. Hey, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, and also through PayPal, paypal.me / the AHN Show, paypal.me / the AHN Show, and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $, the AHN Show, SHOW, and it'll say Michael and show my picture there. And also you can support through PayPal and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, okay? Be sure to register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And next class is Saturday, May 8th, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Saturday, May 8th, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do this classes live, and we record all the sessions, so they're all archived. You can go back and watch them anytime. It's a 9-week, 18-hour online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We also deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. And if you go, it's on the homepage of our website also. We just posted a link here, but it's on the homepage of our website. So when you scroll down, you'll see the information for the radio show and information for the class. Click here to register here. It takes you to the next page. Click here to enroll. It's regularly $80 it's regularly $130 on sale, $80. As soon as you register, you can watch our class from Saturday, May 1st. And then also you can watch the course offering that I did in when I ran the course in February and March. You can watch those sessions also. They're all archived. All right. We have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.
Gain knowledge in minutes from insightful summaries of progressive and socially conscious books. Blacklisted gives you access to curated content that'll satisfy your curiosity to learn and understand different perspectives. Empower yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. It's easy to read or listen to on the go. Blacklisted. Empower yourself. Start your free trial today.
Are you getting ready for fall or winter? We have the solution for all seasonal clothing needs. Kemeticwear.com is the go-to online source for Kemetic African fashion and lifestyle products with a contemporary twist. We're committed to offering unique styles reflecting our African heritage. Kemeticwear.com is inspired by KemeticScribes.com to influence our people in learning and showing pride. Please visit our website at Kemeticwear.com.
We all know the cannabis industry is headed toward an uprise in the past decade. What happens when there is a brand that brings this uprise in a blow? The cannabis industry welcomes her uprise. Hustle her hemp. Delivering excellence with pride is her watchword, and how you choose to embrace it makes it a priority. From cultivating rich cannabis into exquisite and tastefully finished CBD products to delivery, Hustle Her Hemp leaves no stone unturned. Hustle Her Hemp's mission is to empower women of color by building business and creating legacies, uniting beauty, health, and business. We are a pure definition of how we want the CBD industry to become in the future. While we are redefining innovation, we bring the same energy to improving the quality of life. Hustle Her Hemp is the new Uprise.
Hi, I'm Joel Wilson, President and CEO of JCW Computer Consulting LLC, a technology implementation firm with over 20 years of satisfying customers. We offer a full spectrum of industry top-tier branded services. We are an authorized partner or reseller for Lenovo, Zoom, T-Mobile, Microsoft 365 and Surface tablets, Google Workspace, Acer, Asus, Samsung, PCmatic security software, and many more. Our online store features laptops, Chromebooks, computers, printers, accessories, and software. Businesses, take advantage of our free 1-hour Zoom tech consultation and know we offer top nationwide high-speed internet service providers, voice over IP, and cellular phone services. Home users, don't miss our current in-stock Chromebook inventory. Please visit us at jcwcc.com or call 215-879-6701.
All right, we'll talk.